Welcome to my Channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. They say miners used to leave a candle burning at the entrance of abandoned shafts. Not for light, but as a warning. If the flame turned blue, you ran. You didn't ask questions, didn't look back. You just ran. I wish someone had told me that before I went down into the Copper Ridge mine last Tuesday. I wish a lot of things. Listen, before I tell you what I found down there, I need you to understand something. What you're about to hear isn't some campfire story. This happened 6 days ago in West Virginia, and I've got the recording to prove it. If you're listening to this at night, maybe grab an extra blanket. And if you hear any strange sounds while I'm talking, well, just remember what I said about the candles. Still here? Good. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more stories like this. Trust me. After what I'm about to tell you, you'll want to know everything about abandoned mines. Everything. The story begins now. My name is Jake Morrison, and until last week I was just another freelance sound engineer trying to make it in Pittsburgh. You know the type. Recording weddings on weekends, mixing podcasts for $20 an hour, telling myself this was just temporary. That all changed when I got an email from Appalachian Heritage Preservation Society. They wanted someone to document the acoustic properties of abandoned mine shafts throughout West Virginia. $500 a day plus expenses. The job seemed simple enough. Go into old mines, record ambient sounds, catalog echo patterns for their historical database. They said it would help with restoration efforts, maybe turn some of these places into tourist attractions. I should have asked more questions, like why their last sound engineer quit mid-project, or why they insisted I work alone, or why they gave me a special frequency detector that measured sounds below 20 hertz, sounds humans can't even hear. The Copper Ridge mine was my third assignment. It's at about 40 miles outside Beckley, hidden in a valley that cell phones forgot existed. The access road had been washed out years ago, so I had to hike the last 2 miles through thick mountain laurel and rhododendron. By the time I reached the entrance, the October sun was already sliding behind the ridge line, painting everything the color of old pennies. The mine entrance looked like a mouth frozen mid-scream. Wooden support beams, black with age and moisture, framed the opening. Someone had spray-painted "Keep Out" across a newer piece of plywood, but teenagers had clearly been ignoring that warning for years. Beer cans and graffiti decorated the entrance like offerings to some modern cave god. I set up my equipment on a flat rock about 20 feet from the entrance. Digital recorder, shotgun mic, parabolic dish for catching distant sounds, and that strange frequency detector the Society had given me. The thing looked like it belonged in a 1950s sci-fi movie. All chrome and analog dials with a speaker that would emit different tones based on what it picked up. The sun was completely gone by the time I finished my setup. That's when I heard it for the first time. Tap, 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 rhythmic, deliberate, like someone knocking on a door, except it was coming from deep inside the mine. I grabbed my shotgun mic and aimed it at the entrance, watching the levels on my recorder. The tapping was registering clearly, too clearly. Whatever was making that sound wasn't that far inside. Tap, tap, tap. I checked my watch. 7:43 p.m. I made a note in my logbook. Rhythmic tapping sound, approximately 75 decibels, emanating from mine entrance. Possible water drip or settling wood. That's what I wrote. That's what I wanted to believe. But water doesn't tap in perfect 3-beat patterns, and wood doesn't settle with such intention. The frequency detector suddenly chirped to life, its needle swinging hard to the right. The speaker emitted a low warble that made my teeth ache. Subsonic frequencies. The kind that make people feel uneasy in haunted houses. The kind that tigers use to paralyze prey. I probably should have packed up right then. Should have hiked back to my car in the dark and told the society their mine was acoustically documented enough. But $500 a day is $500 a day, and my rent was due in a week. So I did what any broke, curious idiot would do. I grabbed my flashlight and headed for the entrance. The temperature dropped 15 degrees the moment I crossed the threshold. My breath came out in little puffs that looked like ghosts in the flashlight beam. The walls were slick with moisture, and every step echoed like I was walking inside a giant throat. Tap, 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 closer now, maybe 50 feet ahead. The tunnel curved slightly to the left, and my light couldn't quite reach around the bend. I stopped, holding the mic out in front of me like some kind of scientific crucifix. Hello? My voice cracked like I was 13 again. Anyone there? I'm with the Preservation Society. The tapping stopped. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. It pressed against my eardrums, thick and expectant. Even my equipment seemed to hold its breath. No static, no ambient hum, nothing. Then, from somewhere much deeper in the mine, came a sound that made me understand why miners used to believe in Tommyknockers and cave spirits. It was like, have you ever heard a tuning fork underwater? That weird, warped vibration that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere? It was like that, but underneath it was something else. Something that sounded almost like voices. Dozens of them, all humming the same note. The frequency detector went crazy, its needle slamming back and forth so hard I thought it might break. The speaker shrieked, warbled, clicked like a Geiger counter at Chernobyl, and through it all, that underwater tuning fork sound grew louder, closer, angrier. I ran, not gonna lie or try to sound brave. I turned and ran like a scared rabbit, ran so fast I dropped my parabolic dish somewhere in the tunnel. Ran so fast I nearly brained myself on a low-hanging beam. Ran until I burst out of the mine entrance and collapsed on my equipment case, gasping like I'd just surfaced from the deep end of a pool. It took me 20 minutes to stop shaking. 20 minutes of sitting there, staring at that dark mouth in the mountainside, waiting for something to follow me out. Nothing did. Eventually, the normal night sounds returned. Crickets, wind in the trees, a distant owl. Regular sounds. Safe sounds. I started packing up my gear, telling myself I'd come back in the morning to get the parabolic dish, telling myself a lot of things that weren't true. That's when I noticed something on my recorder's display. It was still recording. Had been recording the whole time. With trembling fingers, I rewound to the moment I'd asked if anyone was there. Hit play. Heard my own scared voice echoing in the tunnel. Heard the silence that followed, but it wasn't silent. Not on the recording. There was a voice. Clear as day, a woman's voice, speaking in a whisper so close it might have been lips against the microphone. We've been waiting for you, Jake. We've been waiting so long. I knew that voice. Knew it like I knew my own heartbeat. It was my mother's voice. My mother who'd been dead for 15 years. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't even if I'd wanted to. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that voice. We've been waiting for you, Jake, my mother's voice, but wrong somehow. Like someone had learned to mimic her by listening through a wall. By 3 a.m., I'd given up on sleep and started researching. Copper Ridge Mine, West Virginia. Built in 1887, closed in 1954 after... I had to read the article 3 times before it sank in. Mine disaster, claims 49. Entire night shift trapped after explosion. The date made my blood run cold. October 28, 1954. Exactly 70 years ago this week. The article was sparse on details, common for mining disasters back then. Company didn't want bad publicity, but I found more in a book about West Virginia mining history digitized by some university. The explosion had happened during the night shift. Rescue teams went in, but the mine was too unstable. They heard tapping for 3 days. Voices calling for help. Then, nothing. They sealed the mine with 49 men still inside. I found their names in a memorial registry, regular names, American names. Tommy Sullivan, Robert Chen, Michael Kowalski. Men with families, kids, dreams. Men who died in the dark, tapping on rocks until their fingers bled, calling out until their throats went raw. But here's the thing that made me spill coffee all over my keyboard. Among the victims was a woman, Margaret Morrison, the only female worker in the mine, hired as a secretary for the shift supervisor. Morrison, my mother's maiden name. I called my aunt in Charleston at 6 a.m. She wasn't happy about the early call until I mentioned Margaret Morrison. Then she got real quiet. "How do you know about Maggie?" she asked. "She was related to us?" "Your great-great-aunt. Daddy's side, we don't talk about her much." "Why not?" Another long pause. I could hear her breathing, deciding how much to tell me. "She was different, Jake, even before the mine. Used to say she could hear things other people couldn't. Claimed the mountains were singing to her. People thought she was touched in the head. Then she took that job at Copper Ridge and, well, you know what happened. The cave-in. That's what they called it. But Jake, my grandmother, used to say Maggie knew something was going to happen. Sent a letter the day before saying she'd finally understood what the mountains wanted. Said she was going to join the Harmony." The Harmony? That underwater tuning fork sound. All those voices humming together. I spent the rest of the morning going through my recordings from the mine. Isolated different frequencies, ran them through audio software, looked for patterns. What I found shouldn't have been possible. The tapping wasn't random. It was Morse code. The same message over and over: come back, come home, come below. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when I isolated the subsonic frequencies, the ones human ears can't hear. When I pitched them up into audible range, they weren't abstract sounds. They were voices, dozens of them, all saying my name. Jake, 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 Jake. I slammed my laptop shut and stood up so fast I knocked my chair over. My hands were shaking again. The smart thing would be to delete the recordings, return the equipment to the society, and forget this whole thing happened. Take a normal job, move to a different state, maybe a different country. Instead, I started packing for a second trip to the mine. I know how that sounds. Every horror movie, everyone's yelling at the screen, "Don't go back there, you idiot." But you have to understand, those voices knew my name. Somehow, a mine that had been sealed for 70 years knew who I was before I ever set foot inside. I had to know why. This time, I prepared differently. Industrial-strength flashlights with backup batteries. Rope to mark my path. A camping headlamp to keep my hands free, and something else. My mother's old jewelry box. Inside was a silver locket she'd worn every day until the cancer took her. If something in that mine was pretending to be her, I wanted proof it wasn't really her. I also brought a candle. A simple white emergency candle from my kitchen drawer. If the old miner's warning was real, I wanted to know when to run. The drive back to Copper Ridge took 3 hours. 3 hours of second-guessing myself, of almost turning around a dozen times. But every time I reached for the wheel to take an exit, I'd remember those voices. Remember my name echoing in frequencies I shouldn't be able to hear. The hiking trail looked different in daylight. Less ominous, more sad. Just another forgotten piece of Appalachia, slowly being reclaimed by kudzu and time. Even the mine entrance seemed smaller, less threatening. Just a hole in the rock where men used to trade sunlight for wages. I set up a base camp near the entrance, laid out my equipment, tested everything twice. The frequency detector stayed quiet, its needle barely twitching. Normal background readings. Whatever I'd heard last night was either gone or waiting. At 2 p.m., I lit the candle and placed it on a flat rock 10 feet inside the mine entrance. The flame burned steady and yellow. Safe. I took a deep breath, adjusted my headlamp, and started walking. The parabolic dish was right where I'd dropped it, about 60 feet in. No damage, just a little muddy. I clipped it to my pack and continued deeper, unspooling rope behind me like Theseus in the labyrinth. The tunnel went straight for another 100 feet before hitting the first junction. 3 passages branched off, left, right, and center. Mining companies used to paint symbols to help workers navigate, and I could still see faded markings on the walls. The center tunnel had "main shaft" painted in white letters that looked like ghosts of words. I chose center. The rope whispered against the ground as I walked, a comforting reminder that I could find my way back. My footsteps echoed, but it was a normal echo. No weird harmonics, no impossible voices. Just a man walking in a dark place. Then I saw the bones. They weren't human bones. Let me be clear about that. Rat, probably, or maybe possum. Small, delicate things scattered near the wall like someone had spilled a box of tiny ivory twigs. But it wasn't the bones themselves that made me stop. It was how they were arranged. Perfect spirals, dozens of them. Each spiral made from a different skeleton, arranged with the kind of precision that would make a museum curator jealous. And in the center of each spiral, a small object, a button, a coin, a wedding ring. Personal effects. The kind of things miners would have carried in 1954. I knelt beside one of the spirals, careful not to disturb it. The ring in the center was simple, gold, with an inscription worn almost smooth. I could just make out the words, "To Tommy, love always, Beth." Tommy Sullivan. I'd seen that name in the memorial registry. The temperature dropped again. Not gradually this time. It plummeted, like someone had opened a freezer door. My breath came out in clouds so thick I could barely see through them. And from somewhere deeper in the tunnel came that sound. Tap, tap, tap. But now I understood. It wasn't knocking, it was an invitation. I stood up slowly, my knees protesting from the cold. The frequency detector on my belt started clicking, soft at first, then louder. The needle swung into the red zone and stayed there. "I'm here," I said to the darkness. My voice didn't echo this time. The tunnel swallowed it whole. "You wanted me to come back. I'm here." The tapping stopped. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of my own breathing and the mechanical clicking of the detector. Then, Jake. Not my mother's voice this time. A man's voice, rough and dusty, like he hadn't spoken in decades. Jake Morrison, Maggie's kin. I turned in a slow circle, trying to locate the source. The voice seemed to come from the walls themselves. You knew Margaret?" A laugh. Not a pleasant sound. Like wind through a broken harmonica. "Knew her? Boy, she's the reason we're all still here, still singing, still waiting." The bone spirals began to vibrate, just slightly, like someone was humming a note too low to hear but powerful enough to feel. One by one, the personal effects in their centers started to glow. Not with light exactly, but with something that hurt to look at directly. "She heard it first," the voice continued. "The song and the stone, the harmony that holds the mountain together, earth and air and water and something else, something that was here before the Shawnee, before the Cherokee, before anybody had words for what lives in the deep places. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, follow my rope back to daylight, and never stop running until I hit the ocean. But I couldn't move. The vibration from the bones had spread to the floor, to the walls, to the air itself. It held me like amber holds an insect. The company men thought they were mining copper, the voice said. But Maggie knew better. She could hear what they were really digging toward, the source of the song, and when they got too close, well, mountains don't like being opened up, don't like their secrets spilled. "The explosion," I whispered, "wasn't no explosion, boy. Mountain just swallowed us. Took us in and made us part of the harmony. 48 men and 1 woman, all singing the same note for 70 years. All except Maggie." The glowing intensified. Now I could see them. shadows moving behind the light. Human shapes, but wrong. Stretched and twisted like someone had pulled taffy made of people. She wouldn't sing with us, said the harmony wasn't complete, said it needed something from her bloodline. Someone who could hear both songs, the mountains and the humans. Someone who could bridge the gap. My frequency detector exploded. Literally exploded, sending plastic shrapnel across the tunnel. In the sudden silence that followed, I heard it clearly. The harmony. Not dozens of voices now, but hundreds, thousands. A chord that had been building since the mountains were young, missing just one note to make it complete. The note my great-great-aunt had refused to sing. "That's why you called me," I said. "Why the society hired me." It wasn't about documenting sounds, it was about finding someone with Morrison blood who could hear this. Smart boy. Maggie always said her kin were smart. The shadows were taking clearer shape now. I could see faces in the light. Gaunt, hollow-eyed faces that might have been human once. They were all looking at me, waiting. "Join us, Jake. Complete the harmony. Let the mountain sing through you like it sings through us. It doesn't hurt after the first century or so." I felt it then, the pull, like a fishhook in my chest, tugging me deeper into the mine. The rope in my hand felt suddenly heavy, unnecessary. What did I need with the outside world when there was such beautiful music down here in the dark? My feet took a step forward. Another. The bone spirals spun faster, their glow painting cave paintings on the walls. Images of things that crawled before humans learned to walk upright. My mother's locket grew hot against my chest, burning through my shirt. That pain saved me. Shocked me just enough to remember why I'd brought it. I yanked the locket out and held it up like a shield. "My mother's dead," I said. "She died in a hospital in Pittsburgh. Not here. Not in this mine. Whatever spoke to me last night, you're not her." The harmony faltered. Just for a second, but I heard it. A discordant note in their perfect chord. "Show yourself," I demanded. "If you really knew Margaret Morrison, if you really need her bloodline, show me the truth. All of it." The lights went out. Not dimmed, not faded. Extinguished like God had hit a switch. My headlamp died at the same moment, leaving me in darkness so absolute I could feel it pressing against my eyeballs. Then, a new light. Soft, blue-white, coming from everywhere and nowhere. And I saw her. Margaret Morrison stood before me, exactly as she appeared in the single photograph I'd found online. Young, maybe 25, with the same sharp cheekbones I saw in the mirror every morning. She wore a simple dress and a mining helmet, the kind they used in the 50s. But her eyes were older than the mountain itself. "Hello, Jake," she said, and her voice was nothing like my mother's. It was deeper, resonant, like a cello played in a cathedral. "I've been waiting so long to meet you." "You're not real," I said, but even I didn't believe it. She was more real than anything else in that tunnel, more solid than the rocks, more present than my own heartbeat. Real is a funny word down here. She smiled, and I saw that her teeth were crystals. Not like crystals, actual crystals growing from her gums like translucent fangs. I am as real as the 48 men singing in the walls, as real as the thing that lives in the heart of this mountain. "What happened to you? Really happened?" She tilted her head, considering. "Would you like to see?" Before I could answer, the world shifted. Not moved, shifted, like someone had grabbed reality by the corners and given it a shake. Suddenly, I wasn't in a tunnel anymore. I was in an office, a cramped, underground office lit by oil lamps. Papers covered a desk, and behind it sat Margaret Morrison. The living version, not the crystal-toothed thing she'd become. "October 27th, 1954, she said, watching her younger self work. The night before the accident. I'd been hearing the song for weeks by then. Started as whispers in the coal dust. grew into symphonies in the stone. Young Margaret suddenly looked up from her papers, staring at something I couldn't see. Her eyes were wide, terrified, rapturous. I tried to warn them, the Margaret beside me continued. Told the foreman we were digging too deep, but they were so close to a new vein, you see, so close to wealth beyond imagining. They didn't know the vein wasn't copper. It was something else, something that had been sleeping under the mountain since before the continents split. Young Margaret stood up, walked to the office wall, and pressed her ear against it. Her lips moved, mouthing words I couldn't hear. It spoke to me that night, showed me what it was, a fragment of the first song, the vibration that separated matter from void when the universe was young. It had been trapped here when the mountains formed, wrapped in stone like a pearl in an oyster. And the mining, the drilling and blasting and hollowing, was about to set it free. The scene shifted again. Now we were in the main tunnel, surrounded by miners. They couldn't see us. We were ghosts watching history unfold. I recognized some of the faces from my research. Tommy Sullivan, young and strong, laughing at something another man had said. Then the walls began to sing. It started low, below human hearing, but I could feel it in my bones. The miners stopped laughing. Some grabbed their heads. Others fell to their knees. The oil lamps flickered, their flames turning that deep blue I'd been warned about. It gave us a choice, Margaret said softly, join the harmony willingly, become part of its song forever, or be consumed by it. 48 men chose to sing. I chose differently. You refused. I bargained. Her crystal teeth caught the ghostly light. I told it I could bring it more singers, better singers. My bloodline had always been sensitive to the hidden frequencies of the world. I promised it that one day one of my kin would come. Someone who could complete the harmony properly. Someone who could help it finally break free. The scene dissolved. We were back in the dark tunnel, just her and me, and the weight of 70 years of waiting. So, here we are, she said. The last note of a song that's been building since the foundations of the world. Will you sing with us, Jake? Will you complete what I started? I thought about my life outside, my crappy apartment in Pittsburgh, my struggling career, the loneliness that had driven me to take jobs in abandoned places, recording sounds no one else wanted to hear. What was I going back to, really? But then I thought about sunlight, coffee in the morning, the way rain sounded on windows, small things, human things. Things that mattered precisely because they were small and temporary and mine. What happens if I say no? Margaret's smile was sad. Then I keep waiting. The mountain keeps singing its incomplete song. The 48 keep humming in the walls. And eventually, another Morrison will be born who can hear the frequencies. Maybe your children. Maybe your children's children. The mountain is patient. It's been waiting since the world was young. What's another century or two? And if I say yes, then you become what I am. A bridge between the human and the inhuman. You'll sing with us, yes, but you'll also be able to leave, to walk in sunlight, though it will never warm you again, to speak with humans, though their words will sound like static compared to the harmony. You'll be eternal and alone, powerful and purposeless, real and unreal all at once. She held out her hand. Her fingers were transparent now, and I could see the bones underneath. Not human bones. Crystal formations mimicking the shape of what had once been human. Choose quickly, Jake. The mountain is waking up. 70 years of mining since we were sealed in, 70 years of new tunnels and new wounds. It's angry. It wants its song completed one way or another. If you don't choose, it will choose for you. The walls began to crack. Not break, crack, like ice under spring sun, Light poured through the cracks, that same blue-white light that had shown me Margaret. But now it was violent, searching, hungry. I had seconds to decide, join the harmony and become something more and less than human, or refuse and condemn my family line to the same choice generation after generation until someone finally said yes. The locket burned against my chest, my mother's locket, with her picture inside. She'd never known about any of this, had lived and died without hearing the mountain's song. A normal life, a human life. That's when I knew what to do. I grabbed Margaret's crystalline hand and she smiled, but I wasn't accepting her offer. Instead, I pressed my mother's locket into her palm and spoke the words that had been building in my throat since I first heard the harmony. I refused the song. I refused the mountain. I refused the choice itself. Margaret Morrison, I release you from your bargain. The bloodline debt is paid, not with a voice, but with silence. Let the harmony remain unfinished. Let the mountain keep its secret. Some songs aren't meant to be completed. Margaret's eyes widened. The locket in her hand began to glow. Not with the mountain's light, but with something warmer. Sunlight, maybe. Or love. Or the simple human magic of remembering someone after they're gone. You can't, she started to say, but the glow was spreading up her arm, turning crystal back to flesh. I can, I am. The contract you made was for a Morrison to come and make a choice. You never specified what the choice had to be. I choose neither harmony nor abandonment. I choose to break the cycle. The mountain screamed. No other word for it. The walls, the floor, the air itself shrieked in frustrated rage. The 48 miners materialized around us, their mouths open in that eternal note. But for the first time in 70 years, the note was changing, dissolving, fading. Margaret looked at her hand, her human hand, in wonder, then at me, with eyes that were finally, truly, just eyes. "Run," she whispered, then louder as the tunnel began to collapse. "Run!" I ran. Behind me, I could hear the mountain song tearing itself apart, 70 years of harmony collapsing into chaos. The rope was still in my hand somehow, and I followed it like a lifeline through passages that were folding in on themselves like origami made of stone. The bone spirals exploded as I passed, sending fragments of the past spinning through the air. The personal effects, rings and coins and buttons, turned to dust that might have been memory or might have been regret. I burst from the mine entrance just as the mountain gave one last shuddering sob. Then, silence. Real silence. Not the pregnant pause before horror, but the gentle quiet of a world at peace with its mysteries. The candle was still burning on its rock. The flame was yellow. I sat there for hours, watching the sun set again, waiting for something to emerge from the mine. Nothing did. When I finally worked up the courage to shine my flashlight into the entrance, I saw only a wall of collapsed stone. The mine had sealed itself, this time for good. On the drive home, I listened to my recordings. Static, mostly. White noise and equipment failure. But there, right at the end, just before everything cut out, was a voice. Margaret's voice, but warm now. Human. "Thank you," she said. And then, so faint I might have imagined it. "Tell them we're at peace. Tell them the mountain is sleeping again. Tell them some songs are beautiful precisely because they're unfinished." I never went back. Neither did the Appalachian Heritage Preservation Society. They sent me a check for my work and a letter saying the project had been indefinitely suspended. But sometimes, on quiet nights, I dream about the mine. Not nightmares. Just dreams of darkness and depth and voices singing in harmony. 48 miners and one woman finally free of their eternal song. And sometimes in those dreams I hear my mother's voice. Her real voice. Not the mountain's mockery of it. She's humming a lullaby she used to sing when I was small. A simple human song about stars and sleep and morning coming soon. It's the most beautiful sound I've ever recorded, and I'll never share it with anyone. After all, some songs are meant to be secret. Some harmonies are perfect in their incompleteness, and some choices echo longer than any sound. If you've made it this far, you probably have questions. Good. Questions are what keep us human. Wonder about what's in your local abandoned places. Research your family history. Listen to the frequencies others ignore. But if you ever find yourself in a mine and you hear something singing in the walls, remember Margaret Morrison. Remember that not every invitation needs to be accepted. Remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to complete the pattern. And always, always check the color of the flame. Subscribe if you want to hear more true stories from abandoned places. Comment below if you've ever heard something you couldn't explain. But whatever you do, don't go looking for the Copper Ridge Mine. I made sure it can't be found. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way. Forever. Story number 2. You know that feeling when you're searching for your car keys, and they're already in your hand? That split second of panic before reality catches up? Well, imagine that feeling. But it never stops. Imagine looking at your driver's license and seeing nothing, just a blank space where your name should be. That's exactly what happened to me last Tuesday. And if you're listening to this right now, lying in your bed, thinking this is just another creepy story, I need you to do something for me. Go check your ID. Right now. I'll wait. Did you check? Good, because by the time this story ends, you might want to check again. Now, let me tell you how my name started disappearing, and why yours might be next. It started with a Starbucks cup. I was running late for work. You know how it is. Seattle traffic on a Tuesday morning. The barista called out venti caramel macchiato for, and then just stopped. She stared at the cup, confused, like she was trying to read something that wasn't there. That's mine, I said, reaching for it. She looked at me, then back at the cup. Sorry, I swear I wrote a name on this. I grabbed it and rushed out. Didn't think much of it. Baristas mess up names all the time. Right? Mine's Jennifer. Simple, common, hard to mess up, but whatever. The real trouble started when I got to my office at Preston & Associates, a law firm downtown. I badged in like always, but the scanner beeped red. The security guard, Tom, who I'd known for 3 years, looked at me like I was a stranger. Ma'am, your badge isn't registering. I showed him the plastic card. My photo was there, clear as day, but where my name should have been. Just smooth plastic, like it had never been printed. Must be a glitch, Tom said, typing something into his computer. His face went pale. That's weird. You're in the system, but... He turned the monitor toward me. Employee ID, 447829. Department, legal name, ______, just blank. An empty field where Jennifer Morrison should have been. I'll call it, Tom said, waving me through. Go ahead, miss. He paused, frowning. I'm sorry, what was your name again? The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt like forever. I kept staring at my badge, running my thumb over the smooth space where my name used to be. When had it disappeared? This morning? Last night? I couldn't remember the last time I'd actually looked at it. My office was exactly how I'd left it. Files stacked on my desk, coffee mug with Monday's lipstick stain, but something was off. I grabbed the nameplate from my desk. The brass was cold, empty, and just a rectangular piece of metal. My hands were shaking as I opened my laptop. The login screen appeared. Username, ______, password. I typed J. Morrison out of habit, but the letters wouldn't appear. The cursor just blinked, waiting. I tried again, nothing, like the keyboard refused to spell my name. Then I noticed the family photo on my desk. Me with my parents at Christmas last year. Mom's smile, Dad's terrible sweater, and me in the middle. But if you looked at the bottom where Mom had written in her perfect cursive, Love, Mom, Dad, and... the ink just stopped, like she'd forgotten mid-sentence. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister. Hey, can you pick up wine for dinner tonight? Mom's making that pasta you love. I started typing back, sure, see you at 7, Jen. But when I hit send, the message just said, sure, see you at 7. The signature wouldn't complete. I tried again and again. Each time, the letters of my name just wouldn't stick. That's when the real panic set in, that crawling sensation, like insects under your skin, when you realize something is fundamentally wrong with reality. I yanked open my desk drawer, searching for anything with my name on it. Business cards, blank, letterhead, blank, even my law degree hanging on the wall. Columbia University. Class of 2018. Awarded to nobody. I must have looked insane. Tearing through my office, checking every document, every file, every post-it note, 30 years of existence. And my name was vanishing like it had never been written. Then I found it. One thing, a birthday card from last month, from my coworker Sarah. Inside, in her bubbly handwriting, Happy 30th, Jennifer. Here's to another year of crushing it in court. My name. Proof I existed. I clutched that card like a life preserver. And that's when Sarah walked in. Hey, she started, then frowned. I'm sorry, have we met? Are you new? The card slipped from my fingers. I watched it flutter to the ground, and when I picked it up, the message now read, Happy 30th. Here's to another year of crushing it in court. Jennifer was gone. Have you ever tried to prove you exist? Not philosophically, I mean literally. Try to show someone, anyone, that you're real, that you have a name, that you matter. I left the office in a daze. Sarah had called security, concerned about the stranger in my office. Tom didn't recognize me the second time. Nobody did. 3 years at that firm. And I was suddenly nobody. The drive home was surreal. My car still recognized my thumbprint. Thank God. But the registration in the glove compartment? Blank. The insurance card? Blank. Even the Bluetooth display that usually said Jennifer's iPhone now just showed iPhone. I pulled into my apartment complex in Capitol Hill, hands shaking so bad I could barely turn the key. The mailbox in the lobby, Unit 4B, no name, just an empty label holder. My apartment key still worked, small miracles, right? Everything inside was exactly how I'd left it. My whole life spread out in 900 square feet, but it felt like a museum to someone who'd never existed. I went straight to my closet, pulled out the shoebox from the top shelf, the one with all my important documents. Birth certificate, passport, social security card. Everything that said I am Jennifer Morrison in official black ink. The birth certificate was first, State of Washington, born May 15th, 1994, Seattle General Hospital. Parents, David and Linda Morrison. Name of child, blank. The passport was worse. That photo of me from 2 years ago, awful bangs and all. Staring back at me from a document that refused to acknowledge who I was. Every page that should have shown my name, just empty blue paper. I called my mom. My hands shook as I listened to it ring. Once, twice. Hello? Mom, it's me. I couldn't say it. The word wouldn't come out. I'm sorry. Who is this? Mom, please. It's your daughter. It's nothing. Like my throat closed up every time I tried to say my own name. I think you have the wrong number. She hung up. I tried my sister, my dad, my best friend from college. Same thing. They all acted like I was a stranger, a wrong number, a nobody. That's when I noticed the photos. All around my apartment. Pictures of my life, graduation, vacations, birthdays, Nights out with friends. I was in every single one, smiling, laughing, living, but I was alone. Every group photo had been edited. Not edited, changed. Like reality had just erased everyone else. Or maybe erased me from their photos. The bathroom mirror became my enemy. I stood there, staring at my reflection, trying to say my own name. I am nothing. My name is silence. The words just wouldn't form. I grabbed lipstick, wrote Jennifer across the glass in big red letters. Watched it for 10 seconds, 20, 30, and then, like melting wax, the letters began to blur, to fade, until the mirror was clean again. That's when I realized it wasn't just documents, it was everything. Every trace of my identity was being erased, and I couldn't even speak it into existence. I did what any rational person would do. I Googled myself. Jennifer Morrison, Seattle lawyer. Something had to come up. But the search results were bizarre. There was the actress Jennifer Morrison from that TV show, but when I tried to add lawyer or Seattle or Preston Associates, no results. Like the internet had scrubbed me clean. My social media was worse. Facebook, gone, not deactivated, just gone. Instagram showed user not found. LinkedIn, the place where everyone exists forever, nothing. My digital footprint had vanished. I spent hours searching, trying different combinations. Middle names, nicknames, anything. But it was like searching for someone who'd never been born. Then I found something, a single search result, buried on the 10th page of Google. A forum post from 3 months ago, someone asking, "Anyone else having trouble with their name disappearing from documents?" My heart hammered as I clicked the link. The forum was some obscure site called glitchinreality.net. The post was from user NoName44. I know this sounds crazy, but my name is disappearing from everything. Started with my work ID, now it's spreading. Driver's license, birth certificate, everything. People who've known me for years act like we've never met. I can't even say my name out loud anymore. Please someone tell me I'm not alone. 14 replies. I scrolled through them fast. Same thing happening to me, started last week. My wife's name vanished yesterday. She's sitting right next to me, but I can't remember what to call her. Check your old photos, mine are changing. Don't trust anyone who says they can help, they're part of it. Meeting tonight, Seattle. If you can still read this, you know where. That last comment was posted 6 hours ago, I knew where. Pike Place Market after midnight is a different world. The tourists are gone. The fish vendors are closed, just empty stalls and shadows. But if you know where to look, if you're desperate enough, you find the others. They were in the lower levels, past the comic book shop, in a storage room that smelled like old vegetables and fear. 6 people sitting in a circle, faces lit by phone screens, each one looking as lost as I felt. "You found us," a woman said. Asian, maybe 30s, wearing a Boeing Company jacket with no name tag. Can you tell us your name?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Just like before. She nodded. "None of us can. We've been calling each other by numbers. I'm 3. A man in a Seahawks jersey pointed around the circle. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're 9 now. "How long?" I managed to ask. "For me, 2 weeks, 3 said. Started with my work badge, just like everyone else. By day 3, my husband didn't recognize me. By day 5, I couldn't find any record I'd ever existed. 3 months, 4 added. He looked exhausted, hollowed out. Lost my job, my house, everything. Been living in my car, which I can't even prove is mine. 7 was the youngest, maybe 22. My mom reported me missing, she said, except she doesn't know who's missing, just woke up one day knowing someone was gone, but not who. It's spreading, 8 said. He pulled out a tablet, showed us a map of Seattle covered in red dots. These are all the cases I've tracked. Started with one person in Ballard 6 months ago. Now, he zoomed out, the entire city was covered. And it's not just Seattle anymore. Portland, Vancouver, Spokane. But what is it? I asked. A virus? Some kind of attack? 3 laughed, bitter and sharp. We thought that too. Checked everything. Medical tests, when we could still get them, came back normal. IT specialists found nothing. It's like... She paused, searching for words. Like reality itself is rejecting us. Show her the video, 5 said quietly. 8 pulled up a file on his tablet. Security footage, grainy and gray. This is from a bank in Bellevue, 3 weeks ago. He hit play. A woman walked up to an ATM. Normal looking, middle-aged, inserting her card. Then something happened. The quality was too poor to see clearly, but it looked like she flickered. Just for a second. And then she walked away. But wrong. Like a person-shaped hole in the world. That was the last confirmed sighting of... 8 paused. Of whoever she was. After that, nothing. Even this footage is degrading. By next week, she'll be gone from this too. You're saying we're being erased, I said. Completely. From reality itself, 3 confirmed. And it's accelerating. 6, who hadn't spoken yet, suddenly stood up. He was older, 60s maybe, wearing a UW Medical Center badge with no name. I've been thinking, he said. What if this isn't random? What if we were chosen? Chosen for what? 7 asked. Think about it. We all have had normal lives, jobs, families. We contributed to society. We were, he struggled for the word, connected, networked, part of the system. So, 4 challenged. So what if something, or someone, is selectively removing us, the most connected first, the ones whose absence would cause the most disruption? That's paranoid, 3 said. Is it? 6 pulled out a notebook, pages covered in frantic writing. I've been tracking patterns. The first victims, they were all highly networked. Social workers, teachers, medical professionals, lawyers. He looked at me. People who touched many other lives. People whose absence would create ripples. You're saying someone is targeting us specifically, 8 said slowly. Not someone, 6 corrected. Something that feeds on connections, on identity itself. And the more connected you were, the faster it consumes you. The room went quiet. We all felt it, that truth that sits in your stomach like ice, because we'd all been connected. We'd all mattered. And now, there's more, 3 said quietly. 2, the one who started this group, she found something. Before she disappeared completely, she said there was a place, a building downtown where, she hesitated, where the forgotten go. What building? I asked. The Samson Tower, you know it? Everyone knew the Samson Tower, 42 floors of glass and steel in the financial district, except the building's been empty for years, 5 said. Ever since what? I prompted. 5 frowned. I can't remember. Just know it's been empty. People say it's cursed. Even the homeless won't sleep near it. 2 went there, 3 continued. Said she found others, hundreds of them. People like us, but further along. People who'd lost everything, even their faces. That's impossible, 4 said. Is it? 3 pulled out her phone. Showed us a photo. It was blurry. Taken at night, but you could see figures in the windows of the Samson Tower. Dozens of them, standing, watching, waiting. Except they weren't really figures. They were absences. Person-shaped holes in reality. We have to go there, I said. No, 8 said firmly. Everyone who goes there, they don't come back, not as themselves. Then what do we do? 7 was crying now. Just wait to disappear completely. Nobody had an answer. We sat in silence. 6 strangers who couldn't even share their names, bound together by the horror of being erased. Outside, Seattle lived on, oblivious to the people vanishing from its reality. There might be a way, 6 said finally. 2 left notes, theories. She thought, if we could find the source, the first person who was erased, maybe we could reverse it. How do we find someone who doesn't exist? I asked. 6 smiled sadly. By finding the hole they left behind. The Samson Tower stood like a dead tooth in Seattle's skyline. 42 floors of dark windows, except for the 13th floor. That's where we saw them. The absences, pressed against the glass like moths to a flame. It was 4 who noticed the pattern first. Look at the street, he whispered. The sidewalk around the building was wrong. Not broken, not damaged, just wrong. Like someone had taken an eraser to reality itself. Parking meters stood at impossible angles. Street signs pointed to nowhere and the homeless. The ones 5 said wouldn't come near. They walked in wide arcs around the building, their eyes sliding off it like it wasn't there. We shouldn't be here, 8 muttered. But we had no choice. 3 had calculated it out, showed us the math. At the current rate of erasure, we had maybe 48 hours before we lost our faces. Before we became like those things in the windows. The lobby doors were unlocked. Of course they were. Who locks doors to a building that people can't even see properly? Inside, the wrongness intensified. The security desk was staffed, but the guard was... God, how do I describe it? He was there, but not there. Like looking at a person through heavy static. His badge had no name. His face had no features. Just the suggestion of humanity. He didn't stop us. I don't think he could see us. Or maybe we were already too far gone to matter. The elevator buttons were worn smooth, except for 13. That button was pristine, untouched, waiting. Together, 3 said, and we all pressed it at once. The ride up felt like falling. My ears popped, my vision blurred, and when the doors opened, the 13th floor was full of them. Hundreds of absences, standing in neat rows like an office full of workers. They wore clothes, carried briefcases, went through the motions of existence. But they were holes. Person-shaped wounds in the fabric of reality. Don't look directly at them. 6 warned. But it was too late. One of them turned toward us. Where its face should have been was nothing. Less than nothing. A void that pulled at your eyes. It raised its hand, and I saw it was holding something. A name tag. The plastic was cracked, ancient, but I could just make out the text. Hello, my name is... And then nothing. The first erasure, patient 0. Oh God, 7 whispered. That's him, the first one. The absence moved closer. And as it did, I felt myself fading. Not physically, but essentially, like it was drawing out whatever made me. Me. That's when we saw her. 2, or what was left of her. She stood apart from the others, still partially there. Half a face, 1 eye, part of a mouth. She was trying to speak, trying to warn us, but only fragments came out. The name taker. Who? 3 grabbed her shoulders, tried to hold her together. Who's doing this? 2's remaining eye fixed on the corner of the room. We all turned. There was a desk there, modern, clean, and behind it sat a man in a perfect suit. He had a face, a real face, with gray eyes and a pleasant smile. He was the only complete thing on the entire floor. "Welcome," he said, and his voice was like honey over broken glass. "I've been waiting for you." On his desk was a single item, a leather-bound book, ancient-looking, filled with thousands of pages. He had it open, pen in hand, writing. No, not writing, erasing. "You're the one," I said. Surprised I could speak. "You're taking our names." He smiled wider. "Taking? No, I'm simply collecting, organizing, filing away the unnecessary." "We're not unnecessary," Four snarled. "Aren't you?" The man, the name-taker, tilted his head. "Tell me, what's your name?" Four opened his mouth. Nothing. Exactly. A person without a name is just clutter. Noise in the system. I'm simply cleaning up. "Why?" Three demanded. "Because names have power," he said, turning a page in his book. I glimpsed thousands of entries, all being slowly erased. Every name is a thread in reality's fabric, but the fabric has become tangled, overstuffed. Too many threads, too many connections, the weight of it all threatening to tear everything apart. He stood, walked around the desk. The absences parted for him like water. 7 billion names, 7 billion threads. The system can't hold them all, so I'm downsizing, starting with the most connected, the ones whose threads touch the most others. Remove those, and the fabric loosens. Reality can breathe again. "You're insane," 8 said. "Am I?" The name-taker gestured to the window. "Look at your city, your world, overcrowded, overconnected, everyone knowing everyone, everyone mattering to someone. The weight of all those connections crushing reality itself. I'm saving you all. You just can't see it yet. By erasing us?" 7 was crying again. "By simplifying, streamlining. In the old days, only important people had names. Kings, heroes, gods. Everyone else was just the baker, the farmer, the soldier, simple, clean, efficient." He returned to his desk, picked up his pen. "Now, shall we finish this?" "No," I said, stepping forward. "There has to be another way." "Oh." He looked amused. "And what would you suggest?" He paused, smiled. "I would use your name, but it seems I've already collected it." That's when I saw it. My name, Jennifer Morrison, written in his book, but fading. The ink was disappearing, letter by letter. "Give it back," I whispered. "I can't. Once a name is collected, it's gone forever. That's the rules." "Whose rules?" He laughed. "Reality's rules. The same rules that say you can't have something from nothing. That say energy can't be created or destroyed. That say names, true names, are finite resources." "You're lying," 6 said suddenly. "Names aren't finite, they're created. Every time a child is born, a new name enters the world." "Yes," the name-taker agreed. "And every time someone dies, a name should leave. But they don't, do they? They linger, in memories, in documents, in hearts. The dead keep their names, and the living run out of new ones. Do you know how many Jennifer Morrisons there are? Were? The system is clogged with duplicates, redundancies." He turned the page. More names, more erasures. "I'm simply balancing the books." That's when 2 acted. What was left of her lunged forward, grabbed the book. The name-taker shrieked, a sound like tearing paper, and tried to pull it back. "Now!" 2's fragment screamed. "While he's distracted." We didn't need to be told twice. All 6 of us rushed forward, grabbed the book. It was heavier than it looked, like it contained the weight of every name ever spoken. The name-taker's perfect face cracked. "You don't know what you're doing. Without me, without the collection, reality will collapse under the weight of all those names." "Maybe," 3 said, pulling harder, "but at least we'll exist when it does." The book tore. The sound was indescribable, like reality itself ripping in half. Pages flew everywhere, each one containing hundreds of names. They swirled through the air, a blizzard of identity, and where they touched the absences, people began to reappear, faces formed from nothing, features reassembled. The holes in reality began to fill. No. The name-taker reached for the scattered pages. You don't understand. Too many names, too many connections. The system can't. He froze mid-sentence, because a page had landed on his desk. A single name written on it, older than all the others. His name. "That's impossible," he whispered. I never had a..." But there it was. And as we watched, he began to fade, the collector becoming the collected. "Please," he begged, his perfect face dissolving. "I was trying to save you all. When reality tears, when the weight becomes too much, remember that I tried to..." He vanished. Not like the others. Not a slow erasure, just gone. Like he'd never existed at all. The building shook. The absences were becoming people again. Hundreds of them. All remembering who they were at once. The air filled with voices saying names, their own names, like prayers. "We have to go," 6 shouted. "The building. It's collapsing. Not physically, but existentially. The wrongness that held it together was unraveling. We ran, all of us, the restored and the restoring, down 13 flights of stairs that kept trying to become 12, through a lobby that flickered between real and not, out onto streets that were remembering their proper angles. Behind us, the Samson Tower groaned, twisted, and then stood perfectly normal. Just another office building in downtown Seattle, like nothing had ever been wrong. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister. "Hey Jen, you still coming to dinner? Jen, Jennifer, my name, I could say it, think it, be it." Around us, Seattle continued its existence. People walked past, living their named lives, oblivious to how close they'd come to anonymity. "Is it over?" 7 asked. "May, her name was May." "I think so." 3. Dr. Linda Chen replied. We stood there, 6 people with names, watching the city breathe, somewhere. In offices and homes across Seattle, people were looking at documents that suddenly had names on them again. Somewhere. Families were remembering members they'd forgotten. But I kept thinking about what the name-taker had said, about weight, about the system being overloaded. That night, safe in my apartment, I looked up the Samson Tower, found its history, normal, boring, built in 1987, renovated in 2015, currently 87% occupied, except there was no 13th floor, never had been. I check my ID obsessively now, 5, 10 times a day, making sure Jennifer Morrison is still there. The others do the same. We text each other our names like mantras, proof we still exist. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if the name-taker was right. If reality really is straining under the weight of all our names, all our connections. And sometimes, when I'm falling asleep, I swear I can hear it, the sound of tearing paper. The system trying to balance itself. And somewhere, in the space between dreams and waking, a pen writing new names in an old book, or maybe erasing them. If your name was there when you checked at the beginning, check again, right now. And if you notice even the slightest smudge, the faintest fade, leave a comment below. Tell me your name while you still can. Subscribe to this channel, share this story, because the more people who know, the more connections we make, the harder we are to erase. But then again, maybe that's exactly what causes the problem in the first place. Sleep tight. Story number 3. The brass doorknob in my bedroom turned exactly 47 times last night. I know because I counted every single one, lying there in the dark, pretending to be asleep. The thing is, I live alone, and all my doors were locked from the inside. If you're listening to this right now, check your doors. Are they locked? Are you sure? Because what I'm about to tell you might make you want to double-check, maybe even install a deadbolt or 2. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more stories that'll keep you up at night, in the best way possible. And drop a comment below. Have you ever noticed your doorknobs moving when no one's there? you might not be imagining it. Now, let me tell you the story of how I discovered that some doors should never be opened. My name is Sarah Chen, and 3 months ago I inherited my grandmother's Victorian house in Burlington, Vermont. Not the fancy tourist part, the old neighborhood where the maple trees grow so thick they block out the streetlights, where houses have names instead of numbers. Mine's called Willowbrook, though there isn't a willow or a brook anywhere near it. I'd spent summers there as a kid, but hadn't visited in years. Grandma Rose and we drifted apart after Mom died. Nothing dramatic, just life getting in the way. When her lawyer called about the inheritance, I felt this weird mix of guilt and opportunity. My studio apartment in Boston was bleeding me dry, and here was a free house. Sure, it needed work, but YouTube tutorials exist for a reason, right? The first thing I noticed when I pulled into the gravel driveway that October afternoon was how quiet everything was. Not peaceful quiet, empty quiet. Like the house had been holding its breath, waiting. The key was under the ceramic frog where Grandma always kept it. Some things never change. The door opened with that familiar creak wooden floors protesting under my feet as I stepped inside. Dust particles danced in the afternoon light streaming through lace curtains. Everything smelled like lavender and old books. Exactly how I remembered. "Hello, house," I said out loud. Don't judge, I talk to everything when I'm nervous. My therapist says it's a coping mechanism. I say it's better than talking to myself. I spent that first day just walking through rooms, running my fingers along furniture covered in white sheets, opening windows to let in fresh air, normal stuff. The house had good bones, as they say, original hardwood floors, crown molding, those old glass doorknobs that catch the light. Actually, that was the second thing I noticed. Every single interior door had these antique glass doorknobs, crystal clear, with tiny bubbles trapped inside from when they were made. Beautiful, really. They felt cold under my palm, even though the house was warm. That first night I slept in my childhood room on the second floor. Same twin bed with the squeaky springs. Same glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, though they'd long stopped glowing. I left the door open. Old habit from when I was scared of the dark. Funny how some fears never really leave you. They just wait. Around 2 a.m. I woke up to use the bathroom. Half asleep, I shuffled down the hallway, guided by the nightlight Grandma had always kept plugged in. That's when I saw it, or thought I saw it. The doorknob to the guest room at the end of the hall. It was turning. Slowly. Like someone on the other side was trying to be quiet about it. I froze, bare feet cold against the wood floor. Watched as it rotated maybe a quarter turn, then stopped. My heart was doing this weird flutter thing. But here's the thing about being half asleep, your brain doesn't quite process fear the same way. Instead of running or screaming, I just stood there, waiting. The doorknob didn't move again. Old house, I mumbled to myself. Probably just settling. Houses settle, right? That's what everyone says. Pipes expand and contract, wood shifts, totally normal. I used the bathroom, went back to bed, and by morning, I'd convinced myself I'd imagined it. Trick of the light, half dream. Whatever helps you sleep. But I started closing my bedroom door after that. 2 weeks into living at Willowbrook, I'd established a routine. Coffee at 7, work-from-home job from 8 to 4, dinner at 6, Netflix until I got sleepy. Boring? Maybe, but after years of Boston chaos, boring felt good. I'd also started a renovation list. New paint for the walls, fix the dripping faucet in the kitchen, replace the furnace filter, normal homeowner stuff. I even made friends with Mrs. Holloway next door, sweet old lady who'd known my grandmother for 40 years. She brought over a casserole that first week. Tuna noodle. Very Vermont. Your grandmother was a lovely woman, Mrs. Holloway had said, standing on my porch in her housecoat. Kept to herself these last few years, though. After your grandfather passed. When was that? I asked. I'd been at college when Grandpa died. Couldn't make it to the funeral. Oh, must be 7 years now. Maybe 8. She'd paused, looking at the house like she wanted to say something else, then just smiled. Well, you need anything, I'm right next door. Don't be a stranger. I'd thanked her for the casserole and watched her shuffle back across the yard. Nice to have neighbors who cared. In Boston, I didn't even know the names of the people in my building. It was the third Tuesday when the pattern started. I know it was Tuesday because that's when I have my weekly Zoom meeting with my boss, and I just logged off when I heard it. A soft click, like a door latching. I was in the kitchen, laptop still open on the counter. The sound had come from upstairs. Living alone makes you hyper-aware of sounds. Every creak becomes a footstep. Every settling becomes an intruder. I grabbed a knife from the block, the big one, and climbed the stairs. Hello? My voice came out smaller than I'd intended. Anyone there? Silence. I checked every room, all empty, all doors exactly as I'd left them. Windows locked, nothing disturbed. I was putting the knife back when I noticed it, the door to the guest room. It was closed. I always left it open. Not wide open, but cracked. Just enough to let air circulate. Old house habit Grandma had taught me. Closed doors in an old house lead to mustiness, she'd always said. But there it was, firmly shut. I opened it, half expecting, I don't know what, someone hiding behind it. The room was empty, bed still made with the quilt Grandma had sewn. Dresser with its lace doily. Everything normal except the doorknob was cold, ice cold, in a warm room. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling. You know when something's just off? Like when you're sure you left your keys on the counter but find them on the coffee table. Your brain tries to rationalize. Maybe you're misremembering. Maybe you're stressed. Maybe you need more sleep. But I knew I'd left that door open. I started paying attention after that. Really paying attention. And that's when I noticed the pattern. Every Tuesday and Thursday around 3:17 p.m., the guest room door would close. By itself. I tested it, left it open, went downstairs, waited. Sure enough, click, closed. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, around 11:43 p.m., my bedroom doorknob would turn. Just once. A full rotation. I'd lie in bed watching it in the dim light from my phone charger. Turn, pause, back to center. Saturdays, nothing. Peaceful, normal. I'd almost convinced myself I was losing it. Sundays were the worst. Every doorknob in the house would turn, all of them, at different times. No pattern I could figure out. I'd be watching TV and see the living room door handle move out of the corner of my eye, making dinner and catch the pantry knob rotating. Brushing my teeth and watch the bathroom door handle turn. I installed a camera, one of those Wi-Fi ones from Amazon, pointed it at the guest room door, waited for Tuesday, 3:17 p.m. The footage showed the door closing, by itself. No wind, no vibration, just closing. Like an invisible hand had pulled it shut. I called a contractor, told him the doors were sticking. He came out, checked the frames, adjusted some hinges, charged me $300. The doors still moved. I called a priest. I'm not religious, but desperate times, right? He blessed the house, sprinkled holy water, said some prayers in Latin. The doors still moved. I even called a physics professor from UVM, told him about the house, the patterns, showed him the footage. He talked about electromagnetic fields and structural settling and suggested I get a carbon monoxide detector. I bought 3. All showed normal levels. The doors still moved. By the 6th week, I'd almost gotten used to it. Almost. The human brain's amazing that way. It can normalize just about anything if it happens enough. Doorknobs turn? Must be Thursday. Guest room closing itself? Right on schedule. I'd even started talking to them, The doors, I mean. Good morning, bedroom door. See you at 11:43. Oh, running late today, pantry? Yeah, I know how it sounds. But when you live alone with moving doorknobs, you either go crazy or adapt. Mrs. Holloway had started giving me worried looks when I'd wave from the yard. Can't blame her. I'd lost weight, wasn't sleeping well, had bags under my eyes that concealer couldn't hide, but I couldn't leave. This was my house now, my inheritance, my responsibility. Plus, I was curious. See, fear's a funny thing. At first, it's sharp, immediate, fight or flight. But when nothing actually happens, when the danger never materializes, fear turns into something else. Questions. Why were the doorknobs turning? What was the pattern really about? Was there a message I was missing? I started a journal, documenting everything. Times, dates, which doors, how many rotations, looking for a code maybe, or a sequence. Something that made sense. That's when I found Grandma's journals. They were in the attic, in a box marked Christmas Decorations 1987. Why she'd hidden them there, I don't know. But there they were. Dozen leather-bound books filled with her careful handwriting, dating back 20 years. I brought them down to the living room, made a pot of coffee, and started reading. The first few years were normal. Garden notes, recipe modifications, birthday reminders. Then, about 7 years ago, right after Grandpa died, the entries changed, October 15th. The doors are moving again. Harold always said it was just the house settling, but I know better. They moved for my mother. They moved for her mother. Now, they're moving for me. October 22nd. Tried leaving all the doors open. They still turn, even when open. The knobs rotate like someone's trying to get through. But from which side? November 3rd. Research at the library. Found article from 1892 about the original owners. William and Mary Ashford. Their daughter Emma died in the house. Age 7, scarlet fever, died in the guest room. My coffee went cold as I read. Page after page of my grandmother documenting the same things I'd been experiencing. The patterns, the times, the cold doorknobs. She'd tried everything I had. Contractors, priests, even a medium from Montreal. Then I found the entry that made my blood run cold. December 18th. I understand now. The doorknobs aren't trying to open, they're trying to stay closed. Emma isn't trying to get out. She's trying to keep something in. The next pages were torn out, ripped clean from the binding. The journal skipped to January, talking about seed catalogs and snow removal. Normal things. Safe things. Like she'd decided some truths were better left unwritten. I sat there until the sun went down, journals spread across the coffee table. My laptop opened to historical records I'd found online. The Ashfords had built this house in 1889. They'd lived here happily until Emma died in 1898. Then, nothing. The records went quiet. The house sold in 1900 to my great-great-grandparents. Been in the family ever since. 4 generations of my family had lived here. How many had seen the doorknobs turn? How many had kept the secret? I was so absorbed in the research I almost missed it. The sound that wasn't supposed to happen. Not on a Saturday. Saturdays were safe. Click. I looked up. The living room door had closed. I glanced at my phone. 11:17 p.m. Wrong day, wrong time, wrong. Then I heard it. From upstairs. Not a doorknob turning this time. Something else. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Walking down the hallway above me, I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, then stopped. What would I say? Help, there are footsteps in my haunted house? They'd think I was crazy. Maybe I was. The footsteps stopped at the top of the stairs. I held my breath, eyes fixed on the doorway to the living room. Waiting. The doorknob started to turn. Slowly. So slowly. Like whoever was on the other side was savoring the moment. I wish I could say I was brave. that I stood up, faced whatever was coming. But I didn't. I sat frozen on that couch, my grandmother's journals scattered around me, watching that crystal doorknob catch the lamplight as it turned, then stopped. The footsteps retreated. Back down the hall, a door closed, the guest room from the sound of it. Then, silence. I sat there until dawn. Didn't move. Didn't dare. When the sun finally came up, I crept upstairs. Every door was open. Wide open. Even the ones I knew I'd closed and locked. Except the guest room. That door was closed so tight I couldn't budge it, like it had been sealed shut. I didn't sleep for 3 days. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard those footsteps. Felt the house waiting, watching. I tried to leave. Packed a bag, got in my car. The engine wouldn't start, called an Uber. They canceled. 3 times. Different drivers. The house didn't want me to leave, or maybe something in the house didn't want me to leave. I went back to Grandma's journals. Read them all again, looking for clues in what wasn't written. The torn pages, the gaps. The way she'd stop mid-sentence sometimes, like she'd caught herself about to reveal too much. Then I remembered something. Grandma had been a librarian before she retired, organized to a fault. She wouldn't just tear pages out without keeping them somewhere. If she'd hidden the journals, maybe she'd hidden the missing pages too. I tore that attic apart, opened every box, checked behind every beam. Finally found them in an old coffee can tucked inside a chimney that hadn't been used in decades. 12 pages, folded tight. Water damaged, but readable. December 19th, I went into the guest room last night, had to know. The door fought me, but I got it open, empty, like always. But the walls, oh God, the walls, behind the wallpaper. I could see them breathing. December 20th, research complete. The Ashfords didn't leave because Emma died. They left because of what happened after. The newspaper called it hysteria. Said Mrs. Ashford had lost her mind with grief. But the maid's diary, founded in the Burlington Historical Society, tells different story. Emma didn't die of scarlet fever. She was found in the guest room. Door locked from inside, no windows, no other way out. Just Emma and whatever she'd let in. December 21st. Harold thinks I'm losing it. Maybe I am. But I know what I saw. The walls in that room, they're not walls, they're a membrane. Thin. So thin. And something's pressing against them from the other side. The doorknobs turn because Emma's still trying, still fighting. 7 years old, and she's been holding that door shut for over a century. December 22nd, I understand now. This house isn't haunted, it's a lock. And Emma, poor little Emma, she's not the ghost, she's the key. The doorknobs turn because she's weakening, getting tired. How long can a child's spirit hold a door closed? How long before? The entry cut off there. The next page was different. Shaky handwriting, rushed. January 1st, new year, new plan. Can't tell Harold, can't tell anyone. They'd try to help, try to fix it. But some doors need to stay closed. Some things need to stay forgotten. I'll keep the secret, like my mother did. Like her mother did. Family tradition, family curse. When I die, the house will need a new guardian. Someone strong. Someone who won't ask too many questions. Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. My name, she'd written my name 20 years ago. I dropped the pages. Ran downstairs, had to get out, had to think. But the front door wouldn't budge. None of the doors would. They'd all locked themselves while I was reading, every single one, except the guest room door was open, wide open, for the first time since I'd moved in. I stood at the bottom of the stairs looking up at that dark doorway. I could run, break a window, leave, and never come back. Let someone else deal with whatever this was. But then I thought about Emma, 7 years old, alone. fighting something for over a century while her parents fled and her story got buried and forgotten. I climbed the stairs. The guest room looked normal: bed, dresser, lace curtains. But the walls, now that I knew to look, I could see it, the way the wallpaper seemed to ripple, like breathing, like something massive pressing against rice paper. "Emma?" My voice cracked. "Are you here?" The doorknob turned, just once, gentle. "I'm Sarah, Rose's granddaughter. I want to help." The temperature dropped. My breath came out in clouds. Frost spread across the windows. And then I saw her. Not clearly, just a shimmer, a small figure by the door, transparent, wavering, like looking through water. She was so small, blonde curls, white nightgown, eyes that should have been bright with childhood but were dark with exhaustion. She looked at me, and I understood. She wasn't trapped. She was standing guard. "What's behind the walls?" I whispered. She didn't speak, couldn't, maybe. But she pointed. Not at the walls. At the floor. At a spot near the center of the room. I knelt down. The floorboards were different there, newer. I grabbed a letter opener from the dresser, worked it between the boards. They came up easily. Too easily. Like they'd been lifted before. Underneath was a metal box. Old. Rusted. Inside, photographs, documents, and a letter in spidery handwriting. To whoever finds this, my name is William Ashford. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. My wife's already left. Couldn't stand to stay after what happened. But someone needs to know the truth. We thought we were so clever. Found the old books in the cellar when we bought the house. Symbols, rituals, ways to speak to the other side. Mary missed her mother, and I wanted to make her happy, so we tried it. Just once, in the guest room. It worked. God help us, it worked, but we didn't contact Mary's mother. We opened a door to somewhere else. Something else. It came through just a crack before Emma found us. Our sweet, brave girl. She slammed the door shut, held it closed. But the effort, the strain. She fell asleep holding that door closed. Never woke up. But her spirit, it stayed, still holding, still fighting. The thing we let in, it's still there, in the walls, waiting, if Emma ever lets go, if she ever gets too tired. I'm leaving the house to distant relatives. The Chens. They're strong. Practical. Won't go looking for trouble. The house needs guardians. People to keep the secret, to help Emma when they can, to never, ever let anyone open that door. Forgive us. I sat there on the floor, letter trembling in my hands. 4 generations. My great-great-grandparents, great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, all of them knowing. All of them keeping the secret. Helping Emma hold the door. Until my parents died in that car accident. Until the chain broke. Grandma had been alone then, fighting alongside a ghost child to keep something unspeakable at bay. No wonder she'd grown distant. No wonder she'd seemed so tired those last years. I looked at Emma. She was clearer now, like showing me the truth had given her strength. She smiled, such a sad, ancient smile on such a young face. "I'll help," I said. "I'll stay. We'll hold it together." She nodded. Pointed at the doorknob. I understood, grabbed it with both hands, felt the cold seep into my bones, and for just a moment I felt what she felt. The pressure, the constant, relentless push from the other side, the exhaustion of eternal vigilance. Together, we turned the knob, locking it, sealing it, adding my strength to hers. The walls stopped rippling. Emma flickered, faded. But just before she disappeared, she did something she probably hadn't done in a century. She let go of the door, just for a second, just long enough to hug me. Cold arms around my waist. Then she was back at her post. Invisible, but there, always there. I put everything back. The photos, the letter, the floorboards. Went downstairs, made tea, sat at the kitchen table as the sun came up. My phone rang. Work. I was late for a meeting. I texted back that I was sick, food poisoning, be back Monday. But I knew I wouldn't be. This was my job now, my real job, the family business. I thought about calling someone, telling them, but who'd believe me? And even if they did, some doors need to stay closed. It's been 3 months now. I've settled into a routine. Coffee at 7, check all the doorknobs, work from home when I can, keep an eye on the guest room, talk to Emma sometimes even though she can't answer. The doorknobs still turn every day, regular as clockwork. But now, I know it's not a haunting, it's a heartbeat. The pulse of a house that's more than a house, a guardian system. A lock on a door that should never have been opened. Mrs. Holloway still brings casseroles, asks if I'm okay. I tell her I'm fine, just tired, working on the house. She nods like she understands. Maybe she does. Maybe the whole neighborhood knows. Maybe that's why the houses here have names instead of numbers. Easier to remember which ones are special, which ones are guarding something. Sometimes, late at night, I hear them. The footsteps. But they're not threatening anymore, it's just Emma, making her rounds, checking the locks, standing guard. She's been doing it for so long it's automatic now, muscle memory for a ghost. I've started leaving cookies on the dresser in the guest room. They disappear sometimes. Not eaten, just gone. I like to think she appreciates the gesture. The walls don't ripple anymore. Haven't since that night. Whatever's behind them has gone quiet. Sleeping, maybe, or waiting. But as long as Emma and I are here, it stays contained. I found more of Grandma's notes last week, hidden in a recipe box, instructions, tips. Never try to paint over the wallpaper in the guest room. If the doorknobs stop turning, run. Emma likes violin music. It helps her stay strong. I bought a violin. Can't play it, but I leave classical music on sometimes. The doorknobs seem to turn more smoothly when Mozart's playing. Is this my life now? Pretty much, guardian of a haunted house, assistant to a child ghost, keeper of secrets. It's not what I planned, but plans change. Life throws curveballs. Sometimes those curveballs are supernatural doorknobs and interdimensional threats. You adapt. But here's the thing, and this is why I'm telling you this story. I don't think my house is the only one. Think about it. All those old houses with their quirks. Doors that stick. Rooms that feel wrong. Noises in the night. How many of them are like mine? How many have their own Emmas, holding their own doors closed? How many guardians are out there keeping secrets, protecting the rest of us from things we're better off not knowing about? Check your doors tonight, listen to your house, pay attention to the patterns. Because maybe, just maybe, your doorknobs turn too. And if they do, if you hear those telltale clicks and rotations, don't try to fix it, don't call a contractor, don't move out. Someone needs to stand guard. Someone needs to help hold the doors closed. Maybe that someone is you. Sweet dreams. So, have your doorknobs been turning? Drop a comment below. I read every single one, especially late at night when Emma and I are keeping watch. And if you want to hear more true stories from Willowbrook House, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, this is just the beginning. The house has so many secrets left to tell. Oh, and one more thing. If you're ever in Burlington, Vermont, and you see an old Victorian with a little girl in the window, wave to Emma for me. She's been standing guard for over a century. The least we can do is let her know she's not forgotten. Until next time, lock your doors. But remember, sometimes the real danger isn't trying to get in. Sometimes it's trying to get out. Story number 4. I still remember the taste of that coffee. Bitter, metallic, wrong. Like someone had dissolved pennies in hot water and called it a day. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me ask you something first. When was the last time you forgot something important? Not your keys or your phone. I mean something that mattered. A first kiss? Your mother's voice? The way sunlight felt on your face as a child? because I know exactly when I forgot mine. It was at mile marker 237 on Interstate 70, somewhere between Denver and nowhere, at a rest stop that shouldn't exist. If you're still listening after I tell you this story, if you remember it tomorrow, consider yourself lucky, and whatever you do, if you ever see exit 237 on I-70, keep driving. The story begins now. The check engine light had been glaring at me for the past 50 miles. An angry orange eye in the darkness of my dashboard. My 2018 Honda Civic, usually so reliable, had started making a sound like grinding teeth whenever I pushed past 60. It was close to midnight, and I was still 3 hours from Kansas City where my sister Sarah was waiting for me. "Come on, baby," I whispered to the car, patting the steering wheel. "Just a little further." The November wind howled across the empty plains, buffeting my car like invisible hands trying to push me off the road. I'd driven this stretch dozens of times, visiting Sarah, going to conferences, road trips with friends back in college. But tonight felt different. The darkness seemed thicker somehow, like it was pressing against my windows trying to get in. That's when I saw it. A blue sign materialized in my headlights. "Rest area, 1 mile." I frowned. There wasn't supposed to be a rest stop here. I knew this stretch of highway like the back of my hand, or at least I thought I did. The nearest rest area should have been another 40 miles ahead, but there it was, clear as day. Exit 237. The grinding sound from my engine grew louder, more insistent. What choice did I have? I took the exit. The off-ramp curved longer than it should have, spiraling down and down like I was descending into the earth itself. My headlights caught nothing but empty asphalt and dead grass on either side. No lights, no signs. Just that endless curve. Finally, after what felt like minutes, but couldn't have been more than 30 seconds, the road straightened out, and there it was. The rest stop sat alone in a pool of sickly yellow light from ancient sodium lamps. It looked wrong, like someone had tried to recreate a typical interstate rest area from memory but had gotten the proportions slightly off. The building was too long, too low. The parking lot was too wide. Even the picnic tables scattered on the dead lawn seemed to lean at odd angles. But the strangest thing, there were other cars. At least a dozen of them, all different makes and models, all with out-of-state plates. California, New York, Florida, Texas. Some looked brand new. Others seemed decades old, their paint faded and chrome dulled by time. I pulled into a spot near the building, killed the engine, and sat for a moment in the sudden silence. Through the large windows I could see people inside. They moved slowly, dreamlike, as if walking through water. My phone had no signal. Of course it didn't. The wind hit me like a physical thing when I opened my door, carrying with it the smell of… what? Not the usual rest-stop cocktail of diesel fumes and bathroom disinfectant. This was something else, something organic and wrong, like flowers left too long in a vase. Sweet rot barely masked by perfume. The automatic doors wheezed open and I stepped inside. The fluorescent lights hummed with that particular frequency that makes your teeth ache. The lobby was exactly what you'd expect. Vending machines, travel brochures in a spinning rack, bathrooms to the left and right. But everything felt slightly out of focus, like looking through glasses with the wrong prescription. A woman sat behind the information counter. She was maybe 60, with steel gray hair pulled back in a bun so tight it stretched the skin of her face. Her name tag read Dolores in faded letters. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome to Memory Lane Rest Area," she said. Her voice had a quality like old paper, dry and rustling. "First time?" Is that what this place is called? I've never seen it before. I've driven this route for years." Her smile widened. "Oh, it's always been here, honey. Some folks just aren't ready to find it until they are. Car trouble? I nodded. Engine's acting up. Is there a mechanic nearby, or maybe someone here who could take a look? Oh, we can help with that. But first, she slid a clipboard across the counter. I'll need you to sign in, state law. I picked up the pen, one of those cheap Bics that always skip, and looked at the sign-in sheet. The entries above mine were bizarre. Instead of names and timestamps, there were strange notations. Johnson, M., surrendered. First day of high school. Chen, L., surrendered. Mother's lullaby. Williams, R., surrendered. The smell of grandfather's pipe. What is this? I asked. Dolores's eyes glittered like broken glass. Just a formality, honey. Name and what you're willing to trade. Trade? For the repairs, of course. Nothing's free on the highway. She leaned forward, and I caught that smell again. Sweet decay. Don't worry, we only take what you won't miss. Little memories. Forgotten moments. The time you stubbed your toe in 3rd grade, your ex's middle name. Things like that. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. To get back in my car and drive on, grinding engine and all. But I looked around at the other people in the rest stop. They seemed normal enough. A trucker was getting coffee from a machine. A family with 2 kids was looking at the vending machines. An elderly couple sat at one of the small tables, sharing a bag of chips. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this was just some weird local custom, like those tourist trap mystery spots that claim gravity works backwards. I just need my car looked at, I said. Of course, honey, but rules are rules. Just put down something small, something you won't miss. My hand moved almost on its own. I wrote my name, David Chen, and then paused. What could I trade that wouldn't matter? I thought about it for a moment, then wrote, The taste of hospital jello. Dolores's smile became genuine for the first time. Perfect. Bay 3 around back. Hank will take care of you. The service bays were behind the main building, separated from the parking lot by a chain-link fence that rattled in the wind. Only one bay had its lights on. Bay 3, just like Dolores had said. I knocked on the metal door. It rolled up with a shriek that set my teeth on edge, revealing a classic mechanic's workspace. Tool chests, hydraulic lifts, the smell of motor oil and WD-40. Normal. Comforting, even. You Dave? A man emerged from beneath a lifted pickup truck. He was maybe 45, built like a linebacker gone to seed, with grease-stained coveralls and hands the size of dinner plates. His name patch read Hank, in the same faded lettering as Dolores's name tag. Yeah, my Civic's making a grinding sound. Check engine lights on. Pull her in, let's take a look. I drove my car onto the lift and Hank raised it up with practiced ease. He disappeared underneath with a work light, and I heard him poking around, occasional grunts and metal-on-metal sounds drifting up. Found your problem, he called out after a few minutes. Transmission's shot. Looks like someone put sugar in your gas tank, too. Whole fuel system's gummed up. What? That's impossible. I just filled up in Denver. He slid out from under the car, wiping his hands on a rag that just seemed to move the grease around. Well, that's what I'm seeing. I can fix it, but it'll take some time. And payment, of course. I already signed something inside. Gave up. I paused, realizing how insane it sounded. The taste of hospital jello. Hank laughed, a sound like grinding gears. That'll cover the diagnostic. For repairs this extensive. He scratched his chin, leaving a fresh grease smear. I'd say we're looking at something more substantial. Maybe your first pet's name? Or how about the day you learned to ride a bike? You're serious. You actually want me to trade memories for car repair. Course, I'm serious. That's how things work here at Memory Lane. He gestured to the wall, and I noticed for the first time it was covered in Polaroid photos. Hundreds of them. Each showed a car, and beneath it, a handwritten note. I walked closer, reading some of them. 1995 Ford Taurus. Traded first kiss for new alternator 2012 Camry. Grandmother's chocolate chip cookie recipe for transmission rebuild 2007 Jeep. Sound of father's laugh for engine replacement. This is insane, I said. Maybe, but your car ain't going nowhere without repairs, and I'm the only mechanic for 100 miles in any direction. Hank's friendly demeanor hadn't changed, but there was something harder in his eyes now. Course, you could always walk, but it's awful cold out there, and dark, and there's things in the desert that come out at night. Hungry things. A coyote howled in the distance, as if on cue. Or maybe it wasn't a coyote. The sound was too low, too long, too wrong. How long will the repairs take? I asked. Oh, I'll have you on the road by sunrise. You can wait in the diner. Mabel makes a mean cup of coffee. I thought about my options. My phone still had no signal. The nearest town I remembered passing was at least 30 miles back, and that sound came again. Definitely not a coyote. It was closer now. Fine, I said, but nothing important. How about the plot of a movie I saw once but can't remember the title of anyway? Hank considered this, then shook his head. Needs to be something with weight, something that matters to you even if you think it doesn't. How about your first heartbreak? Not the person, just the feeling. You don't need that pain anymore, do you? The strange thing was, he was right. What good had carrying that hurt done me? It was 15 years ago, Jessica Martinez, junior year of high school. She'd left me for Tommy Chen. No relation despite the last name. I'd moped for months. Okay, I heard myself say, the pain from my first heartbreak. But that's it. Deal. Hank stuck out one massive, grease-stained hand, and I shook it. His grip was like a vice, and for just a moment I felt something shift, like a tooth being pulled, but in my mind. A hollow space where something used to be. Head on over to the diner, Hank said, already turning back to my car. I'll come get you when she's ready. The diner was attached to the main building, accessible through a set of double doors that said, Mabel's Kitchen, open 24 hours, in peeling red letters. The smell hit me as soon as I walked in. Coffee, bacon grease, and that underlying sweetness I'd noticed before. Stronger here. It looked like every truck stop diner I'd ever been in. Red vinyl booths, checked linoleum floor, a long counter with rotating stools. A jukebox in the corner played something I almost recognized but couldn't quite place. The tune seemed to shift every time I focused on it. Sit anywhere, hun, a woman's voice called from the kitchen. I slid into a booth near the window where I could keep an eye on the parking lot. The table was slightly sticky, the menu laminated and yellow with age. But the items listed were off. Morning special. Eggs any style with a side of childhood summers, $8.99. Trucker's Delight. Meatloaf made from scratch, just like you remember. $12.99 dessert of the day. Apple pie a la mode. Warning, may contain traces of nostalgia. $6.99 coffee. I looked up. The waitress, Mabel, I assumed, was a heavy-set woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a beehive hairdo that defied several laws of physics. She held a pot of coffee in one hand and a cup in the other. Sure, I said. She poured, and I caught that smell again. Pennies, copper, wrong. But I was so tired, and it was warm, and what choice did I have? I took a sip. It tasted like nothing, not bad, not good, just absence, like drinking the idea of coffee rather than coffee itself. First time at Memory Lane, Mabel asked, sliding into the booth across from me like we were old friends. Yeah, my car broke down. They always do. She smiled, but it was sad. Funny how that works. Like the road itself decides when you need to stop here. How long have you worked here? She thought about it, her face scrunching up. You know, I can't quite remember. Feels like forever. But that can't be right, can it? I must have had a life before this. A home, maybe kids. But when I try to think about it, She shook her head. It's like trying to remember a dream. The harder you grasp, the more it slips away. A cold finger traced down my spine. What is this place? Oh, hon. Mabel reached across the table and patted my hand. Her skin was ice cold. It's exactly what it says it is. A rest stop. A place to pause on your journey. To leave behind what you don't need anymore. But memories aren't like old clothes. You can't just throw them away. Can't you? Tell me, what did you have for lunch 3 Tuesdays ago? What was the name of your second-grade teacher? What did your grandmother's perfume smell like? She tilted her head. We're all forgetting all the time. Memory lane just makes it efficient. I wanted to argue, but I found I couldn't answer any of her questions. The information was just gone. Had it always been gone? Or was this place already working on me? The other people here, I said, looking around the nearly empty diner. How long have they been here? Time's funny at memory lane. Some folks pass through in a few hours. Others... She glanced toward the far corner booth where an old man sat alone, staring at an empty coffee cup. Well, some folks find they've traded away so much they can't remember where they were going. Or where they came from. So they stay. That's horrifying, is it? Look at him. He's not unhappy. Can't miss what you can't remember. I stood up abruptly. I need to use the restroom. Down the hall, hun. But don't wander. The back areas aren't for customers. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, lined with doors. Restroom. Employees only. Storage. And others with no labels at all. The fluorescent lights flickered in a pattern that almost seemed like code. In the restroom, I splashed cold water on my face and tried to think. I needed to get out of here, car or no car. But when I tried to remember why I was driving to Kansas City, the reason felt slippery. Sarah. I was visiting Sarah, my sister. But what did she look like? What was her last name? We had different last names, didn't we? Why? No, this wasn't happening. I pulled out my phone, hoping for even 1 bar of signal. Nothing. But I had photos. I could look at photos. I opened my gallery and my blood turned to ice. The photos were there, but they were wrong. Faces were blurred, like someone had taken an eraser to them. Places I knew I'd been to looked unfamiliar, and some photos were just black squares, as if the memories themselves had been deleted. That's when I heard it. Singing. A child's voice, high and sweet, coming from somewhere deeper in the building. Trade away, trade away, trade away all. The memories you'll never recall. What's the use of keeping the pain? Welcome to memory lane. I burst out of the bathroom and nearly collided with someone. A young woman, maybe 25, with hollow eyes and a dreamy smile. Careful, she said. You'll spill your memories. I looked down. She was holding a mason jar filled with what looked like fireflies, but the light was wrong. Too blue, too cold. What is that? My college years, she said proudly. Traded them for a full tank of gas and new tires. Who needs all that student loan anxiety anyway? She drifted past me, humming that same tune. I watched her go, then made a decision. I was leaving, now. I'd walk if I had to. But when I pushed through the diner doors back into the main lobby, Dolores was waiting for me. Going somewhere, Mr. Chen? I want to leave, now. Of course. As soon as your car's ready. Hank's almost done. Why don't you have a seat? Watch some TV? She gestured to a small waiting area with a few chairs and an old CRT television playing static. I'll wait outside. I wouldn't recommend that. Her smile never wavered. It's not safe out there at night. Things from the desert, you understand. Lost things. Hungry things. Things that follow the smell of memories like sharks follow blood. As if to emphasize her point, something scraped against the outside of the building. Long, deliberate scratches, like fingernails on wood. But whatever was making that sound would need fingernails the size of kitchen knives. I sat down. The TV wasn't playing static, I realized. It was showing memories. Not mine. At least, I didn't think they were mine. Children playing in a yard I didn't recognize. A woman blowing out birthday candles. A man teaching a boy to fish. Normal scenes, but they felt hollow, performative, like actors who'd forgotten their motivation. "Those belong to the station," Dolores said, sitting down beside me. "Orphaned memories, traded away and never claimed." "Claimed? Oh, yes. Sometimes people come back, realize they made a mistake, want their memories returned." She laughed, that paper-dry sound. "But memories are tricky things. Once they're out of your head, they change, ferment, become something else. Would you want to put something like that back in your mind?" On the screen, the fishing scene continued, but now there was something in the water behind the boy. Something large and dark, with too many teeth. "What are you people?" I asked. "People?" Dolores seemed genuinely amused. "Oh, honey, we haven't been people for a long time. We're what's left when you trade away too much. Husks, caretakers. Someone has to run the rest stop after all. And if I refuse to trade anything else, then you'll wait for your car and wait, and the hungry things outside will get hungrier, and eventually you'll realize that anything is better than being trapped here, and you'll trade. They always do. There has to be another way. There is." Her voice dropped to a whisper, "but it costs more than most are willing to pay. Tell me." She glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers. "You can buy your way out with someone else's memories. Fresh ones. Bring us a new customer, and we'll let you go. Your car, good as new, your memories, intact. Well, mostly intact. You want me to lure someone else here? Not lure, just mention the rest stop, plant the seed. The road will do the rest. It always does, for those who need to forget." I thought about it. Who did I know who carried pain they'd be better off without? My co-worker Jim, still mourning his wife 5 years later. My neighbor Mrs. Patterson, reliving her son's death every day. My ex, Claire, who... Wait, I'd had another ex? When? What was her name? Claire, what? The forgetting was accelerating. "Time's running out, Mr. Chen," Dolores said. "Hank's almost done with your car. You'll need to pay in full. What's it going to be?" I stood on shaking legs. Through the window I could see shapes moving in the darkness beyond the parking lot lights. Tall, impossibly thin figures that didn't walk so much as flow across the ground. They were waiting. "What happens if I just run? Get in my car and drive away without paying?" "Oh, honey." Dolores's smile was almost pitying. "You can't leave memory lane without paying. That's not how roads work. Every journey has a toll. And this one?" She spread her hands. "This one demands memories." I thought about Sarah, my sister. I was driving to see her because the reason was gone. "I'll make you a deal," I said. "One more memory, but I choose which one. That's not how it works. Then I'll take my chances with those things outside." Dolores studied me for a long moment. "What did you have in mind?" I took a deep breath. "The memory of this place. Everything about memory lane. You take that, and I can't tell anyone about it, can I? Can't lure new customers if I don't remember." Her eyes widened. For the first time since I'd arrived, Dolores looked genuinely surprised. "That's clever. Too clever." She stood smoothing her skirt. "But there's a problem with that plan. You see, memory lane isn't just a memory. It's an experience, a scar. Even if we took the details, the shape of it would remain. You'd dream about it, have nightmares, feel the pull of the road calling you back. But I wouldn't remember why." "No," she admitted, "you wouldn't." "Then do it." She was silent for so long I thought she'd refuse. Then, "Very well, but I choose the specifics of what goes. And Mr. Chen?" Her smile was sharp as broken glass. "You won't like what remains." Before I could respond, she pressed her hand to my forehead. The sensation was indescribable, like someone reaching into my skull and pulling out threads, but each thread was connected to 1,000 others. Images flashed and disappeared. The rest stops exterior. Dolores's face, the diner, Mabel, the singing child, the things in the darkness. But she was right. Even as the memories faded, something else remained. A wrongness, a sense of something missing, like a tooth knocked out in a fight. "Your car's ready," Hank's voice, distant and distorted. I blinked. I was standing in a rest stop parking lot, keys in my hand. My Honda Civic sat in front of me, engine running smooth. Dawn was breaking on the horizon, painting the sky purple and gold. Why was I here? I'd been driving to somewhere, to see someone. The reason danced just out of reach. A woman stood by the building's entrance. Middle-aged, forgettable face, name tag too faded to read. "Safe travels," she said. I got in my car and drove away, merging back onto I-70. In my rearview mirror, the rest stop faded into the morning haze. By the time I'd gone 5 miles, I couldn't remember what it looked like. But sometimes, late at night, I dream about a place I can't quite recall. A place that smells like copper pennies and decay. A place where something important was taken from me. And sometimes, when I'm driving alone on empty highways, I see exit signs that shouldn't be there. Exit 237. My hands grip the wheel tighter, and I press harder on the accelerator, fleeing from something I can't name. I still don't know why I was driving to Kansas City that night. When I called the number in my phone labeled Sarah, a stranger answered. "Wrong number," they said. No one by that name lived there. But the strangest thing, sometimes I catch myself humming a tune I don't recognize. A children's song about trading things away. And when I do, I taste copper on my tongue and feel an ache in my chest like something's missing. Something important. Something I traded away at a rest stop that doesn't exist. Or maybe it does. Maybe it's waiting out there right now, somewhere between the miles, between the moments. Waiting for the next traveler who needs to forget. And if you ever see exit 237 on I-70, do yourself a favor, keep driving. Just keep driving. So tell me, do you remember how this story started? Can you recall every detail? Or are some parts already getting fuzzy, like a dream fading with the morning light? Check your memories. And if you found yourself gripping your screen a little tighter during this story, if you're already scrolling down to the comments to see if anyone else has seen exit 237, then maybe you should subscribe. Because I have more stories about the places we shouldn't go, the roads we shouldn't take, and the prices we pay for forgetting. Sweet dreams, if you can remember them.